Hi everyone! My name is Hiromi Narita. I'm the study abroad advisor at Kirkwood Community College. So at this community college, there are so many study abroad programs. One of the longest run program, students go to Italy, Rome. And today we have Dr. Renee Schrader as a guest. She's a professor of English at Kirkwood Community College. She has taken students to Rome many, many times. And I'm very, very excited to learn about her program today, actually. So would you mind telling us, like, how did this program happen, like, original story of this?
Oh, thanks so much for asking, Hiromi. And like Rome itself, there's an origin story to this program. I met a wonderful woman, 19th century British professor of history at a conference, and by the end of the weekend, she decided to take a risk and invite me to come to Rome.
Wow.
And there I met humanities director, Dr. Ron Weber. So they had a program to Rome, and I spent 2 years more or less as a grunt, figuring out how their program worked. But I was so impressed with their interdisciplinary content, the way they had scaffolded this as a Layers of Rome course where you would intersect with the past and present. You'd study, ancient Roman history, but then you would go to a site and unpack its medieval layers, its Baroque layers. And so you would constantly see in Rome that there's these layers of history, art, architecture, literature, all in the same kind of space. And their program was really an original design to bring students into a space and really help them unpack what they were seeing. So I was impressed with their generosity towards students and what they had done to make travel so transformative. And so having seen what just being in their program had done for me and the risk that they had taken by inviting me in to do the grand tour and to bring literature into this, I just really wanted to share that with students because we all know travel is transformative. And when students go to Rome, they come back, they're enthusiastic and energetic, and they transform other people around them. And I think that's how we get to global citizenship, by this transformativeness. And well, the other things is simply that when you go to Rome and you're with students all day and you go out with them to eat at night and you assess what you've seen that day, you're deepening the learning experience, you have the opportunity to educate the whole person. And that's always been part of the background, the mission of what I was taught in grad school. We were mentored. And so this program mentors students, develops them. And then the third pillar of that is, of course, I want them to read and experience life more deeply. So I see travel and reading as very much conjoined. And the medieval theologian, St. Augustine, probably said it best when he said, "The world is a book, and those who don't travel read only one page." So thinking about all of these things, I was very excited to have the opportunity. From just even a professional standpoint, I had often admired and loved the Romantic poets. Mary Shelley, Percy Shelley, and Lord Byron were Anglo-Italians. They had gone to Rome, lived there extensively. They embodied what it meant to be a traveler. And so much of the literature they wrote was inspired by being in Rome. So this seemed like a natural fit for me, the site-based learning. Go see the places that inspired poetry. Go to the non-Catholic or the Protestant cemetery and be able to read lines from Percy Shelley's Adonais. It's an elegiac commemoration of John Keats, the Romantic poet who died there and whose residence in Rome during his last 4 months of his life is now a museum dedicated to all romantics. It's a living testimonial to one of the most wonderful poets. And it keeps, generating more pilgrimages to Rome. So it was an exciting opportunity, and it remains that for me, to develop myself, develop more about women writers who were part of what was called the Grand Tour in the late 18th century and early 19th century. It was a way to trace later generations of travelers, particularly women writers like Margaret Fuller, who found freedom in Rome, Edmonia Lewis, who was an African-American sculptor and Chippewa descent sculptor who found herself freer in Rome than she could be in America. And then the great Frederick Douglass went there as well and described what I think of too is Rome is a dream of a lifetime. So there was just so many reasons to be able to share this excitement with students and to generate their own fascination and development of the whole person through this transformative program.
Yeah, it sounds like there's like academic, personal, and professional reasons why you really want to carry out this program.
Sure,
that's very nice.
That's right.
Yeah, so I would like to go to the next question, if it's okay. So I want to know how do you create and run this program? What are the kind of like basic philosophy behind?
That's a wonderful question. The shorter answer to this is there's 3 pillars of the way this is set up. And the first is pre-departure preparation. I can't say enough good things about the importance of preparing students for what they will see in Rome. The second pillar, of course, is I mentioned we do on-site guided learning. So it's group activities, it's faculty-designed ways to get them to unpack a site more deeply. And then the third pillar is reflection. What happens once a student comes back? What's the opportunity then to synthesize, deepen, and engage in what we call the recursive learning process? That's an important kind of outcome, I think, in just about any course. But maybe just to be a little bit specific, is, a student maybe coming into Rome is going to be faced with what Margaret Fuller described as this jumbling of the past and present together. And so even just reading what Margaret Fuller describes as, how do you unpack this? How it doesn't make sense. Or walking around on the Palatine, and Thomas Hardy's poem, is capturing the same experience we all have. Is I don't know what to make of all this wreckage at my feet. I don't know what to do. I don't know what I'm seeing. And so we read about, writers who are trying to do what we're doing as travelers. And I think that's really reassuring. But the other kind of things is to find things that are relatable. So pre-departure would also include things like understanding the forum, or the Roman forum, that is, because there's a lot of them, as how is it like a marketplace that, or your small town that has places to shop, places to meet, places to worship. And so, we start with things that are familiar. We try to deepen things. And then, as I mentioned, we follow a somewhat historical, chronological approach. So, students might be familiar with St. Peter's Square and Basilica, but the idea might be to say, well, did you know that this place where the papal audience takes place was actually Nero's circus? And then later there's a Christian level where the Emperor Constantine decides, I'm going to build, a memorial to Saint, the idea that St. Peter's died here, even though that's been maybe disproven a little bit, but the idea is we're going to build a basilica. And then students are thinking, oh, well, a basilica, what's that? And it's like, well, when we went to the Roman Forum, you saw a basilica design, and that's a meeting place. And then, here's Christian Rome taking on Roman architectural features, incorporating the rosette design into it, and then it becomes a Christian space. Rome becomes a place of, pilgrimage. And then by the time we get through the Renaissance, there's more building, more incorporation of the interior design, and it's all mosaics inside St. Peter's Basilica. But we get to the Baroque period where the architect Bernini designs this whole architectural space to be spectacular and dramatic. Wow. And so you turn the corner and you walk into this imposing space, which is depending on how you feel about it, it's welcoming, but it's also dazzling, and it's also a testimonial to the power and the universal Catholic Church. So it's like holy mothership. You walk into the space. And so students are struck by the way Rome uses spaces as theater, as spectacle. And so that's just everywhere in Rome. And so they've heard about Rome, they've learned about these things, but then on site they experience. They get to be in these spaces. And then we do group activities so that they can understand, build on architectural ideas. Or we might read, a story by Henry James so they can understand how a lot of people went into this space of St. Peter's feeling like an atom. So the literature intersects with the sites. It helps them understand travelers before them. They can go into the Capitoline Museum, as we do, and go to what's called the Sala dei Gladiator and see what was thought to be the dying Gaul, but it's a sculpture of they thought it was a dying gladiator. It's now known as the dying Gaul, but it's just it's a marvelous sculpture, and it's this man in his last death throes. And Lord Byron goes to see this, and he writes about it. And then other travelers went to go see the dying gladiator. And so there's a whole tradition that springs up with that. And Nathaniel Hawthorne's The Marble Faun opens in this same room. So students are just, I think, really appreciative of they get to Rome and then they're seeing what they've read about. Yeah. We're in those same settings, and they haven't changed that much. So there's that part of it. And then the third kind of dynamic is they have an opportunity then to write about in journals, do assignments that prepare them then for reflecting and synthesizing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow. So it sounds like, I think you also mentioned before that you help students to be traveler instead of a tourist. And I wonder what other outcomes you've observed from your students.
I'm really glad you brought up that, because the idea is we're following the footsteps of grand tourists, but we're trying to be more culturally sensitive. So to be a traveler means to be able to unpack a site with more than just a very superficial glance at it. We want students to be independent. Some students haven't been on a plane before, or they haven't learned how to read a train schedule. And so it's really a wonderful opportunity to educate them in those ways, and then see how they come back with an appreciation for something like, La Dolce Vita, the sweet life, or what the Italians call, this like dolce fa niente, which translates as, the sweet art of doing nothing, but it really just means being contemplative rather than rushed about with an itinerary. So they get a deeper experience, and then the transformative effects are just so powerful. I wish I had more time to talk about them, but I'll say that they come back as different people who don't fit into the same box.
Yeah.
Often they change their majors, they change their course of life. I've had several students go on to do semester-long study abroad programs.
Wow.
Not just in Italy, but that's been popular. One student moved to Greece permanently. And I've had students now starting their own study abroad programs. So it's really exciting. So it's I think our program fulfills Kirkwood's mission of lifelong learning. Yeah. It fulfills the idea of travel is psychological as a journey, as well as just a physical journey. So it would embody also start here, go anywhere, and in the best ways that we can take that meaning across. But I'll maybe just mention one kind of quick anecdote. I was giving a lecture at the Baths of Caracalla, and these are Emperor Caracalla's. It's this big bath structure, and yet it's decaying and falling apart. But you see in the crevices of the walls, flora and fauna jutting out, this splash of poppies, and so you have this sense of the ephemeral and the permanency with you all the time. It's like Rome itself is a memento mori, reminder that we're all going to die. And so it's in a more optimistic way, it reminds us how to live. And I had a student write in his journal that he understood, being at the Baths of Caracalla, what Romanticism really was. And he learned more in this lecture than he had in his entire 19th century British Romantic poetry class, which I thought was a stretch, but I think the idea was, I get this because I can feel the power of being somewhere.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. I honestly want to learn more about it, but I would ask, so if there's any message that you want to tell any other professors who want to be part of this transformative process for students by leading program, what would you say to them?
I would say there's never been a better time to do this, you have great support at, through global studies. Find maybe partners who are interested. I'd say shadow faculty who've done these programs and learn from, our mistakes and where we're still growing, because we still are. And I'd encourage everyone to follow what I think was best said by Henrik Ibsen, that the duty of every person, or the responsibility, is to discover who you are and become that person. And so I think a travel program helps us discover ourselves, and it helps students. So there's just no better opportunity than travel to do that.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Dr. Schroeder. I really look forward to listening to more of those. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.